What's going on that you wanted to talk? Well, it's a bit difficult to say. But I've seen someone who looks like you walking with your husband, but I think it was not you. And not just once or twice. That day, I went to work as usual and carried out my daily tasks. Then, one of the employees told me that my husband was seen walking with another woman who resembles me. I have an older sister, Anna, who is 3 years older than me. I hardly ever communicate with her now, so I have no idea what she's up to. I haven't even told her that I got married, so I started worrying, thinking that woman might be Anna. This is because, back in high school, Anna once stole my boyfriend. Since then, I've completely stopped speaking to her. But I couldn't help wondering if she's come to take something from me again. You've seen them multiple times? Yes. I thought it was you from afar. But the outfit wasn't the same as what you wore that day, so I felt suspicious. When I got closer, it turned out to be a different woman who just looks similar. I've seen them in the sales area several times, apparently on dates or something. There were moments when they held hands and hugged. And I couldn't keep silent any longer, so I decided to report it. As the company's president, I didn't want to bring personal issues into work. So, I pretended everything was normal in front of the employees, but deep down, I was worried that I might be getting cheated on. However, at this point, Dennis's infidelity wasn't confirmed. Since there was no definitive proof, I decided to investigate a little. It's sudden, but I need to go on a business trip from next Monday. So I'll be away from home for 5 days. Is that so? I don't have any problems being alone. Anyway, good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you. When I mentioned that I would be away on a business trip, Dennis seemed slightly happy. Since I am not home that often, he can cheat if he wants to cheat. But perhaps, he is happy that I will be completely absent. With those thoughts, I prepared something. Then Monday came around. On Tuesday morning, as soon as I woke up, I checked the footage from the surveillance camera which I installed before I left. You're really cute. I love you. I love you too. To my shock, the surveillance camera captured my husband and sister together. In the midst of an intimate moment. I immediately prepared to confront them and headed home. I'm home. I hear voices. Are you with someone? Wait a minute. Why is everyone here, huh? I don't understand. And why are Dad and Mom here too? My name is Sarah, and I currently run a company that develops software systems and websites. And I also work as a software engineer. Ever since I was a child, I was good at math, worked hard at my studies, and went on to attend the top university in the USA. After graduating, I joined a major IT company, and within 3 years, I started my own business. About the project that the client asked us to change requirements recently, how is it going? I'm worried if we can keep up since it's quite a change. We've managed to implement some of the requested features. But we're still unable to implement some. Sounds quite challenging? We've finished most of the coding, but we can't resolve the errors. Understood. Once I finish the current task, I'll take over. So make sure to complete the other tasks. That client is our top priority. I graduated in the top 5 of my class at the university. And was quickly recognized for my skills as an engineer at a major company. Shortly after I became independent, I started as a freelancer and gained clients while working. And now I have grown to the point where I employ several engineers at my company. I truly enjoy my current job, and every day shines bright. No matter how busy it gets, it's proof that the company is doing well. And it boosts my confidence more and more. One day, I had dinner with one of the clients. You're the same age as me. I've heard about you from my seniors. And it's really amazing that you manage a company at your age. I respect you. Thank you. When you're young, you have a lot of energy. And I decided to keep challenging myself. It's still far from stable, so I'll keep working hard. It was a dinner meeting, partly to greet the new contact representing the client's company. The new contact was the same age as me and we shared similar hobbies. It was our first meeting, but we clicked right away and got along well. Then, I look forward to continuing working with you. Outside of work, I hope we can go out to eat again. Likewise, thank you. The dinner went well, and I felt that I could build a good relationship with this person in the future. At the same time, I found myself slightly considering him as more than just a good business partner. His last words especially added fuel to my feelings. As a child, I was always studying, and even as an adult, I had only worked. Gradually, he became someone special to me. Will you go out with me? From now on, I want to be more than just a business partner. I want to be someone special. Really? Are you serious? Yes, I'm always serious. I was just finishing a system that his company had ordered. And it was around the time of delivery that he confessed his feelings to me. I knew he liked me as he often asked me out for meals. But I was nervous and couldn't find the right words when he actually confessed. My heart raced, and it felt as if the world I was in wasn't real. But he was looking straight at me. Looking into his clear eyes, I was convinced that he was serious. For sure. I look forward to it. Good. I thought I messed up for a second there. But I'm happy it worked out. Because I was busy with work, I never thought I'd have a boyfriend. So this confession made me truly happy. In my heart, I whispered that I would build a long relationship with him. About a year later, he proposed to me. It was a long-awaited proposal, and I felt the happiest I had ever been in my life. I thought that the happy days with Dennis would continue after marriage. But my expectations were betrayed in a bad way. I quit my job. What? You quit your job, what does that mean? Well, you run a company, right? Then there's absolutely no need for me to work. We can live comfortably on your earnings alone. I was at a loss for words in shock. Dennis's argument that we could live on my earnings alone wasn't wrong. But the problem was that he quit his job without discussing it with me. Why didn't you consult me about it? If you were going to quit your job, you could have at least talked to me about it. I don't feel good about being informed this way after the fact. You're kind, so if I had talked to you about it, you would have told me it's okay to quit, right? The answer is obvious, so why bother with troublesome consultations? Dennis didn't seem to think what he had done was wrong at all. And made excuses without showing any regret. The problem wasn't the financial aspect, but that he had made such a major decision alone. Now we are not just a couple but a married couple. As a married couple, consulting each other on big decisions is a must. It's a problem if you don't consult with me properly. It's not as simple as whether we can live off my income or not. You're running a company and making money. So covering living expenses shouldn't be a big deal, right? We're a couple, after all. In exchange, I'll help out with the housework. Dennis said this without any hint of remorse. It's as if he believed there was nothing wrong with his actions. And that I was being unreasonable for being surprised. However, I sighed at Dennis's lack of sense. It was my fault for not seeing this side of his personality before we got married. Since there's no going back after getting married, all I can do is ensure that no further problems arise as we continue to live together. From now on, when making big decisions, you need to inform me. We're not living separately, after all. Just because I'm the president of the company doesn't mean I can use the company's money freely. You understand that, right? The company's revenue and my salary are separate things. I said I understand, didn't I? Stop nagging. I get it, you don't have to say the same thing over and over. Don't treat me like I am dumb, okay? If he truly understood, I wouldn't say anything more. Since he's not a child, I believe he understood why I was angry. Believing this, I decided to stop addressing the issue of him quitting his job on his own. However, his actions were completely contrary to his promises. He said he would help with housework in exchange for not working, but he did none at all. My company had implemented flex time, so I didn't leave the house until 10 a.m. Even at that time, he wouldn't get up at all. And yet, he did nothing around the house and spent his days lounging, watching TV, or playing video games. My patience finally reached its limit. Hey, you promised you'd help with the housework. Why are you just playing around all the time? It's ridiculous that I have to come home from work and do everything. I quit my job because of stress. So, this is a period of rest. I'm considering re-employment in the future, but that might become impossible if you keep this up. He said it almost as if he was threatening me. While he may have been stressed, looking at his current situation, it didn't seem to be a serious issue. Every day, Dennis seemed to enjoy his time watching TV or playing games. I've seen many people stressed and struggled mentally, but he didn't fit any of those characteristics. Even so, if you have time to play games, you can do some housework, right? Like running the washing machine or the dishwasher. That's simple. We even have a robotic vacuum cleaner, so housekeeping should be much easier than usual. I'm not very good at housework in the first place. Well, I'll learn little by little. Don't rush me. I was beginning to think it was useless to say anything more to him. It seemed like he only cared about himself and was indifferent to how I felt. Since there was no point in fussing over it any longer, I decided to hire a housekeeper. Work had been getting busier recently, and I simply didn't have the time to do household chores after work. If hiring a housekeeper would solve the problem, then so be it. Before I knew it, 5 years had passed. During that time, my company had grown significantly and succeeded in establishing 2 branches. I also started another company focusing on IT consulting, and now I have a company with about 2,500 employees. Then, one day, what's going on that you wanted to talk? Well, it's a bit difficult to say. But I've seen someone who looks like you walking with your husband. And I know it was not you. And not just once or twice. That day, I went to work as usual and carried out my daily tasks. Then, one of the employees told me that my husband was seen walking with another woman who resembles me. I have an older sister, Anna, who is 3 years older than me. I hardly ever communicate with her now, so I have no idea what she's up to. I haven't even told her that I got married, but I started thinking that woman might be my sister. This is because, back in high school, Anna once stole my boyfriend. Since then, I've completely stopped speaking to her. But I couldn't help wondering if she's come to take something from me again. You've seen them multiple times? Yes. It was from a distance, so I thought it was you, the president. But the outfit was different from what you wore that day, which made me suspicious. So, I went closer and realized it was a different woman who just looked similar. I've seen her in the sales area several times, probably on a date or something. There were moments when they held hands and hugged. And I couldn't stay silent anymore, so I reported it. Despite looking apologetic, I must appreciate her courage for coming forward with this information. Thank you so much for telling me. It's a family issue, so I'll resolve it within the family. But sorry for the trouble. From now on, you can focus on your work. I didn't want to create a heavier atmosphere, so I consciously spoke in a cheerful tone with a smile. Then, her face gradually brightened up, and she quickly returned to her desk. As the president of the company, I didn't want to bring personal issues into the workplace. Even so, I continued to act normally in front of the employees, but inside, I was worried about the possibility of infidelity. However, at this point, Dennis's infidelity wasn't confirmed. Since there was no definitive proof, I decided to do a little digging. It's sudden, but I need to go on a business trip from next Monday. So I'll be away from home for 5 days. Is that so? No problem, I can manage alone, so good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you. When I mentioned that I would be away on a business trip, Dennis seemed slightly happy. Usually, since I'm not at home, he can do whatever he wants. If he wants to cheat, he can cheat without me knowing. But since I am usually home at night, perhaps, my complete absence from home makes him happy. With that in mind, I made certain preparations and then Monday came around. As I told Dennis, I left the house for 5 days. However, the business trip was a lie. My real intention was to monitor Dennis's actions through a hidden camera in the house. He might bring his mistress home, and that was my target. Once I arrived at the hotel, I immediately checked the surveillance camera footage. Dennis was taking a shower and preparing to go out. I wasn't sure if he was going to meet his mistress, but I decided to watch his actions for now. After getting ready, Dennis left the house quickly, and while I continued to work, I kept checking the surveillance camera footage periodically. However, Dennis did not return home. So, I went to sleep at midnight. Dennis hadn't returned yet, so I thought he might have stayed overnight somewhere. However, the next morning, as soon as I woke up, I checked the surveillance camera footage. You're really cute. I love you. I love you too. Shockingly, the footage showed my husband and my sister together, in the midst of being intimate. I was speechless with shock, but the next moment, my mind was filled with anger. The speculation that he might be cheating had turned into certainty. I could have stormed home alone, but before doing so, I decided to call various relatives. And 30 minutes later, I'm home. I hear voices, "Are you with someone?" I quietly shut the front door, trying to make as little noise as possible, and entered the house. Knowing that the two were in the bedroom being intimate, I went up to the bedroom door, took a deep breath, and shouted loudly. Since I was monitoring the inside with the surveillance camera, I knew exactly what was happening inside. The moment they heard my voice, the two jolted and then stared intensely at the bedroom door. Without hesitation, I opened the bedroom door and entered the room with the relatives I had brought with me. It seems you two are having quite a good time together, aren't you? Can you explain this situation so that all of us can understand? They looked like deers in the headlights. I made sure to control my emotions and handle the conversation smoothly. Ideally, I wanted to yell at them, but I knew that wouldn't be helpful. Wait a minute. Why is everyone here, huh? I don't understand. And why are Dad and Mom here too? After receiving a report from an employee that Dennis might be cheating, I independently conducted my own investigation. Though I couldn't catch any definitive proof, I discussed the suspicions with both my parents and my in-laws. They promised they would come immediately if anything happened. I called all my relatives in my contact and 10 or so of them gathered at my house to witness this chaotic scene. Do you both realize the seriousness of what you've done? Getting involved with each other's family, what were you thinking? I was shocked when I heard there might be an affair. But to think it's Sarah's own sister, Anna. This has to stop now. Both of you, this is unforgivable. How do you plan to take responsibility for this? Especially angry were both mine and his parents, who furiously yelled at Dennis and Anna. Facing the parents' furious expressions, Dennis and Anna seemed completely intimidated. They shrank smaller, looking down in silence. It was like watching a mouse cornered by a cat. And I felt profoundly miserable from the bottom of my heart. Wait a minute. Let me explain. She came on to me. I told her we shouldn't do this because it's wrong. But it was like she forced me, kind of. Why are you lying? Yes, I initiated contact. But you were the one who got enthusiastic and invited me. You were enjoying it because you think I'm cuter than Sarah. Don't start lying now. Unlike you, I'm married. It was wrong for you to contact me in the first place. What they should be doing first is apologizing to me. Instead, they began to push the blame onto each other. Neither seemed to feel responsible for their actions, nor did they have any intention of apologizing. Some of the relatives who came were so appalled by their exchange that they were beyond angry. Enough. It's outrageous to blame others and shirk your own responsibilities. At this point, who initiated it doesn't matter. Don't you even have any remorse for what you've done? If you truly felt sorry for what you did, why don't you kneel and apologize? That's what you should be doing. After being scolded by both fathers, the two seemed to come to their senses. Though they couldn't get out of the bed because they weren't dressed. They began to apologize right there. I'm really sorry for letting it come to this. It was just a momentary lapse. Me too. It was like high school days, just a bit. Well, if he hadn't invited me, I wouldn't have done it. Do you even understand what you're being told? Stop making excuses and blaming others. Didn't you just hear that? If you were truly remorseful, you wouldn't be making excuses, right? When I said this, they fell silent again. Perhaps I was mistaken to expect any sense of decency from people who could betray their family like this. They can betray their family because they feel no guilt about it. So, I really am sorry about what happened. I'm seriously sorry. I'll apologize too, so for now, can everyone please leave? Let's set another time to talk, okay? No need for another time. I don't intend to see you two ever again, and I'll settle everything here. I didn't want to see these people again. Moreover, when there was a suspicion that Dennis might be cheating, I had already decided to divorce. If my suspicions were wrong, I would discard the divorce papers I had prepared. But if not, I would have him sign them right there. My mind was made up. Could you sign this divorce paper, please? What? Divorce? After all this, you thought we wouldn't get a divorce? It seems like you really don't understand the seriousness of what you've done. But, do we really need to go as far as a divorce? Sure, what I did was wrong, but doesn't it seem a bit much? So let me ask you this. Are you saying that even though you cheated, you don't want a divorce? And you want to continue being supported by me? You want me to pay the rent, the living expenses, and even hire a housekeeper, while you continue to live however you like? For a moment, Dennis's words sounded so absurd and shameless, they could have been a joke. I was doing my best to contain my emotions, but I could feel my anger rising. And, Anna, I will be filing for emotional damages against you. Whether we're family or not doesn't matter. Paying damages for adultery is common societal sense. I don't have a job, how can I possibly pay any damages? Besides, you run a company and aren't short of money, right? What does my running a company have to do with this now? Aren't damages meant to help someone live after a divorce? Then, just demand it from this foolish man of yours. As a family, I shouldn't be involved. And like I said, he was the one who seduced me. If anyone is a victim, I am the one. Stop saying such petty things all the time. Their exchange was absurd and unbearable to watch. It was like talking to children. Despite being older than me, why can't they engage in a proper conversation? Being family does not exempt one from paying for emotional damages for adultery. Their understanding of damages is also mistaken, revealing a lack of education. Growing up, Anna, who had always been praised for her looks, looked down on me because I was studious. She believed that being pretty was more important than being smart for a successful life. And look where that got her. There's no point in discussing further with someone lacking education. From now on, we will settle matters through a lawyer. Is that okay? A lawyer. Are you serious about this? Of course, I'm serious. If you won't agree to the divorce and pay the alimony, then I'll just hire a lawyer. Remember, I am still a company's president, so don't underestimate me. Don't be ridiculous. Your company isn't doing well, right? That's why you're taking out your stress by bullying your family. What a pathetic person you are. My anger was nearly at its peak, but her last comment was unforgivable. She knew nothing of the effort I put in after graduating from university. Enough with the nonsense. Living off your wife or parasitizing your parents while mocking me. I manage a company with 2,500 employees. Generating more revenue than you could earn in a lifetime. Most of it is the company's revenue, so I don't take much as a salary. What? You earn that much? Since you never showed any interest in me as your wife, I never told you. But don't expect much from the property division. I haven't saved much because I own a large asset, my company. And I only transfer enough salary for necessary expenses. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me now? I apologize too. I'm truly sorry. I'll change my ways and start working seriously. And I'll support you devotedly. Let's start over as a couple. After learning the reality of my company, they suddenly changed their tone. How much more could they belittle others? I'm not an ATM or a puppet for them. Just as I was about to take a deep breath and shout, my father intervened. Enough from both of you. If you don't stop now, I might lose it. Just decide now whether you'll sign the divorce papers or not. No need for further talk. I feel the same. Both my father and father-in-law are over 6 feet tall and work in physical labor, resembling wrestlers. That day, with their stubble, they looked even more intimidating. Under the glare of these large men, both were completely cowed. Overwhelmed by the pressure, Dennis reluctantly signed the divorce papers. I left the house with the divorce papers and our relatives. Thank you all for your support. I'll update you once the alimony and damage is settled. I deeply apologize for my son's behavior. As a father, I'm truly sorry. Please don't apologize, father-in-law. You weren't involved in this affair. I'm grateful that you stood by me until the end. Even so, I feel sorry because our son has done such a terrible thing. I apologize. Both of them supported me to the end, and I needed to express my gratitude for that. After sharing my feelings with them, we left our own ways for that day. Afterwards, I contacted a lawyer and received detailed advice about claiming damages. As it involves financial matters, I wanted to leave it to professionals. And I asked for a referral to a lawyer who specializes in divorce cases. From the law firm contracted by my company. I then demanded damages from both Dennis and Anna, and a month later, the payments were deposited successfully. Since then, I've been able to completely cut ties. And now I am working hard every day as a single woman. From what I've heard, Dennis struggled to find re-employment and faced financial difficulties immediately after the divorce. He's barely making ends meet by working part-time jobs and is trying hard to repay the debt he incurred to pay the alimony. As for Anna, she too was disowned by our parents and is desperately trying to get by each day. However, the situation they're in is entirely their own fault. They should deeply regret their actions and live with that regret going forward. As for me, I continue to lead the company as its president even after becoming single. The people I work with are trustworthy, unlike my ex-husband and sister. I plan to continue valuing such individuals. What's important in life is not how much money you make or how attractive you are. What really matters is building good relationships with people around. This applies to professional relationships, family, friends, and all relationships in one's life. Even without money or marriage, if you can build a life filled with love and trust for those around you, you can lead a joyful life. Going forward, I intend to cherish and care for the trustworthy people and family in my life. Hurry up and unpack, maid. My parents are coming soon, so don't cause any trouble, okay? Ethan, I wasn't informed about living with your parents. Of course, you weren't. I decided this by myself. There's no need to tell you. You just need to listen to what I say without complaining. If you have a problem, you can leave, right? It's absurd. Deciding unilaterally to live with the in-laws. And Ethan went ahead with buying a new house without discussing it. Moreover, he dumped all the moving preparations on me. It's unbelievable, but I wasn't surprised at that moment. Because I knew everything. And I had already taken preemptive actions. Okay. I'll start unpacking right now. So, where are your belongings? Huh? I left the moving preparations to you, didn't I? You should at least keep track of where the stuff is. Oh, sorry. I just remembered. Your belongings aren't here. So, I can't unpack them. As I calmly informed him, his face instantly changed color. His irritation was at its peak due to my defiant attitude. What is that attitude towards your husband? Are you getting carried away because we moved to a new house? Don't get ahead of yourself, you're just a maid. He vented his anger loudly, not caring about the onlookers. Several passers-by seemed to notice the strange atmosphere and chose to ignore it. Amidst this, I smiled inwardly. Who is really getting carried away? Who is really getting ahead of themselves? I will make him understand. While Ethan and I were glaring at each other, the in-laws arrived at our new home. They must have been looking forward to a new life. But their faces turned somber as they sensed the tense atmosphere. I heard Ethan's loud voice. What happened? Lucy, if there's a problem, don't hesitate to speak up. We're family now, after all. We should talk things through without holding back. They spoke to me calmly and kindly. Living with Ethan wasn't always pleasant, but I cherished the moments spent with the in-laws. I was able to make it through thanks to them. Gratitude naturally flowed from my lips. Thank you for your concern, father and mother. But this time, it's my fault for making him angry. I accidentally sent his belongings to another place. It's only natural he's upset. They were surprised to hear this. It was unusual for me to make such a mundane mistake. Since our marriage, I had strived to be the perfect wife for Ethan. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, I never slacked off. For him, this might have been expected, but the in-laws appreciated my efforts. Thank you for always caring. We're glad you are his wife. They had often expressed such kind words. So, when they heard about this mistake, unlike Ethan, they didn't shout but continued smiling and asked for clarification. Then, do you know where you sent it? As long as we know the place, we can retrieve it quickly. So, Ethan, please calm down. Well, if you say so. Ethan nodded reluctantly, suppressing his anger. Even Ethan couldn't act tough in front of his parents who raised him. Remembering his oppressive attitude before they arrived made my blood boil. But I couldn't get emotional if I wanted to complete my revenge. I took a deep breath to calm myself, then casually revealed the truth. Actually, I sent his belongings to his affair partner's house. What? Did I hear that wrong? Did I just hear the word affair? You misheard, it's a misunderstanding, and it's totally unrelated. In a panic, he shouted loudly, his voice drowning out his parents. He was visibly flustered, spitting as he spoke, his eyes wide open. However, being accustomed to lying, he quickly regained his composure. The cold sweat that had briefly appeared was now gone, and he was smiling coolly. Sorry for raising my voice suddenly. That statement caught me off guard. I was just shocked. An affair is some kind of mistake. I'm married to Lucy, right? I wouldn't do anything to destroy that trust. But Lucy isn't someone who would say such outrageous things without any basis, right? Yes, I'm shocked, but we need to hear both sides. Seeing his parents still uncertain, Ethan plastered on a friendly smile and placed his hands on their shoulders. Dad, Mom, I'm your son. I wouldn't do anything to upset you. Sure, couples fight, and when you walk down the street, you might feel a spark with someone attractive. But that's all it is. We swore love to each other. I wouldn't act thoughtlessly. Can we trust you? You're our son, so you must be responsible for your words, right? Of course. Work has just been really busy recently, and Lucy is just feeling lonely. She probably just said this lie to get my attention. Isn't that right, Lucy? Turning to face me, his mouth was still smiling, but his eyes were not. Agree with me, don't say anything unnecessary, his inner voice seemed to say. Had I still been the compliant wife, I might have caved at this moment. But having prepared everything, I had nothing to fear. Instead of flinching, I responded with the biggest smile. Not at all. What, you? What are you starting to say? My defiance was clearly unexpected, as he looked far more flustered than before. As he tried to close the distance from his parents and approach me, the voice of the in-laws intervened first. What do you mean by a not at all? Is your version different from Ethan's? I deeply appreciated the fairness of them. Although we had legally become a family, it's common for biological children to be favored. I had wished to remain family with these wonderful people, but that was no longer possible. At least to repay their kindness so far, I felt the need to tell them the truth. Actually, he has been treating me like a maid on a daily basis. He dumped all the preparations for the move on me. Moreover, I wasn't even informed about living with you until we arrived at this new house just earlier. He threatened to throw me out if I should object to living together. What? That's completely different from what we were told. He told us that you were all for it. So, was it just his unilateral decision? The in-laws, looking incredulous, eventually focused their gaze on Ethan. Ethan, faced with their silent questioning, vehemently defended himself. That's nonsense. I definitely explained everything to her. She's just playing dumb. She's taking advantage of your kindness. Trying to get back at me because I haven't been paying attention to her. Don't be fooled. It's hard for us too when you both make such conflicting claims. There's no solid proof for either claim. This is just a fruitless argument. What a mess. Perhaps frustrated by their ambiguous stance, he started yelling at me without restraint. Lucy. Stop throwing a tantrum already. You're confusing Dad and Mom, and me too. Let's discuss this more openly and honestly instead of lying. I am speaking openly and honestly. It's you who are trying to twist things. Father, you said it's just a fruitless argument without evidence, right? Then, let me show you some evidence right now. What? It was Ethan, not the father-in-law, who was surprised by the word evidence. Ignoring his displeased face, I pulled out a voice recorder from my pocket. As I pressed the play button, his true nature was revealed. Hurry up and unpack, maid. My parents are coming soon, so don't cause any trouble, okay? Ethan, I wasn't informed about living with your parents. Of course, you weren't. I decided this by myself. There's no need to tell you. You just need to listen to what I say without complaining. If you have a problem, you can leave, right? Listening to the audio, he dropped the keys to the new house. They clattered loudly on the stone steps. Hey, what was that? What do you mean, what? That's what you said to me just a moment ago. Have you already forgotten? Are you starting to suffer from dementia? That's not what I mean. Why the hell did you record that? People don't normally carry around voice recorders. Ethan seemed unaware of how rough his tone had become. He didn't realize the suspicious glares of his parents piercing through his back. That's because of how you usually treat me. What did you say? I've reached my limit with your bullying. But you have such a good public image that no one would believe me just based on what I say. If you could smooth things over like earlier, it would all be over. That's not acceptable. I wanted to get out of this situation. So I've been collecting objective evidence by carrying a voice recorder. What, you can't just do whatever you want. Just as he was about to grab me, another hand reached out from behind him. My father-in-law pulled him back by the shoulder. As Ethan turned to face them, they looked furious. Ethan. What was that audio about? Weren't you able to stand by your own words? And what is this of bullying she is talking about? That's a separate issue from the cohabitation and the affair, right? The way you spoke in that audio sounded very oppressive. You haven't always been treating her like that, have you? Ethan, faced with the irate expressions of his parents, turned pale, forgetting his anger. It was hard to believe that this mere shadow of himself was the same person as the man who had dominated me for so long. No, it's not like that. I guess I got too carried away with the excitement of starting a new life. I apologize for saying unpleasant things. But I never regularly hurt Lucy. Is that really true? Can we actually believe that this time? Everyone makes mistakes. But forgiveness is only granted once. Repeating the same error isn't acceptable. It's common sense for any adult, isn't it? I swear, I do swear. I haven't been harassing Lucy regularly. It's the truth. Thank you for your promise. Now, let me clarify the truth. With a smile, I reached for the voice recorder again and played another recording. This time, Ethan's crude laughter filled the air. Hey, maid, there's dust on the shelf. Are you slacking off on cleaning despite being just a maid? Someone who doesn't work needs punishment. Sleep in the hallway tonight. Don't you dare bring a blanket. As more of his derogatory comments played, the faces of the in-laws reddened like a volcano ready to erupt. Unable to bear it any longer, Ethan screamed in a voice that cracked under the strain. All right, I admit it. I have been tormenting you regularly. Please stop the recording. I complied with his plea and pressed the stop button. The area fell silent immediately, except for Ethan's ragged breathing. I've stopped it as you asked. Now, will you truly apologize? Not only me, but the in-laws also stared at him intensely. Swallowing nervously and hanging his head down, he apologized. I'm truly sorry for the hurtful words I've thrown at you. I promise never to demean you again. No one responded. We just continued to stare at him. Initially compliant, Ethan raised his face soon. Oh, it hurts. My neck. I didn't say you could raise your face yet. Nor did I say you could speak. Since when do I need permission? I'm the one suffering a neck pain here. Haven't I apologized enough? Whether an apology is sufficient isn't for the one apologizing to judge. It should be judged by the one receiving the apology. But let's leave it at that for now. We're not finished talking. As I smiled, he looked utterly dejected. What now? You still have something to say? I'm telling you, I haven't cheated. Don't worry. It's not about cheating. It's something a bit more amusing. Take a look at this. I pulled out my smartphone and played a video. The in-laws leaned over to look beside him. Is this the bedroom of you two? There's Ethan coming in. He's pulling something out of the drawer. A wallet? Oh. He's taking money out? This was what I wanted to show you. Fun, isn't it? Ethan? He stared at the smartphone, his face turning ashen. His lips trembled and slowly turned a shade of purple. This is my secondary wallet. This frilly, glittery long wallet? Besides, this drawer is part of my vanity. Are you saying you've been keeping your wallet in my vanity drawer? He fell silent, unable to respond. The in-laws' piercing gaze seemed to demand a confession. But he just looked down, lips tightly sealed. Going silent when it's inconvenient, just like a child. Well, that's fine. I'll explain to your parents. Lately, money has been disappearing from my wallet bit by bit. If it were a one-time thing or if my bank card had been missing, I might suspect a burglar. Unfortunately, it's just the cash that keeps getting skimmed. Glancing at him, I saw his face was as red as a beet, his gaze still fixed on the ground. If he had been a saintly man, I wouldn't have doubted him, but in reality, he's been a cruel and wicked person who's been tormenting me. I installed a camera to uncover the truth. And this video is the result. This is unbelievable. My father-in-law muttered as if talking to himself. The shock must be immense, thinking his only son, whom he cherished, had finally started a family, only to be bullying that family and even stealing money. My mother-in-law seemed to have lost the strength to speak, only sighing deeply. I haven't stolen anything. Why would I need to? I work and earn money. I have enough money. I'm not a beggar. Despite the evidence from the camera, he still awkwardly continued to make excuses. But perhaps that's understandable. Admitting to stealing would inevitably lead to probing into his motives. The truth is, Ethan started stealing money after deciding to buy a new house a few months ago. After obtaining decisive evidence with the camera, I started investigating why he was stealing money from me. That's when I first discovered he was financing his affair. With such clear evidence right here, do you still plan to struggle? Just admit it clearly. You needed the money for your affair. No. I definitely haven't been having an affair. The name of your affair partner is Rebecca, isn't it? I don't know her. She's a fictional character. I couldn't help but sigh. It's frustrating to see him continue to deny this so stubbornly. Likely because there's no concrete evidence yet regarding the affair. But one would think it's obvious. Both the bullying and the theft were meticulously clarified. It's unlikely that only the affair would be ambiguous. I threw at him the investigation report on the affair I had received from the detective agency. As he picked up the pages detailing the evidence, the color drained from his face. Conversely, the in-laws' faces turned red with blood rushing to their heads. They clenched their teeth so hard I worried they might break. Both of them shouted loudly without regard for anyone around. What is this, Ethan? After claiming all this time there was no affair, now you're cornered with undeniable evidence. If you were going to end up showing such a disgraceful side, you should have admitted your guilt from the start. Do you even have a human heart, you bringer of parental misfortune? Parents worry about their children no matter how old they get. But you've gone beyond worry to outright disgust. What were you thinking, deceiving your own family? Not just Lucy, you lied to us, your parents too? Contrasting with the intense anger of his parents, Ethan's expression grew even colder. After they had finished shouting, Ethan let out a long sigh and then said something outrageous.
Ah.
Well. It all came out in the end. I was supposed to do this more skillfully. Oh well. I was planning to ditch you all anyway. It's just happening a bit sooner than planned.
Yeah.
What do you mean, Ethan? What do you mean by saying you're going to ditch us too? They lowered their voices and demanded the truth. By now, he was no longer trying to hide his malevolence. It seemed he had completely given up. What do you mean? What do I mean? I bought this beautiful new house to live with my beloved Rebecca. I've been pressuring Lucy with sudden cohabitation. And dumping all the moving responsibilities on her. Making her want a divorce. Once I'm single, it'll be easy. I'll just give you a plausible reason to leave. Family can be easily managed with a little sweet talk. How could you? You were thinking such foolish things? What do you think of Lucy and us? Shame on you. Intentionally harming someone's psyche is nothing short of a crime. They unleashed their greatest anger of the day, but he just laughed it off. You all were just stepping stones for me to meet Rebecca. Gracefully accept that you've been ditched by me for Rebecca. Huh? He unabashedly spouted vile lines. But suddenly stopped laughing because I started laughing louder than him. This caused Ethan and the in-laws as well to look puzzled. What's so funny? It's creepy. It's just so absurd. How could I not laugh? I've already spoken to Rebecca, you see. That's why I know her true nature. To her, you are just an ATM. What? What nonsense are you spouting now? You must be jealous of her, huh? Give up. Unlike you, she is beautiful and has grace. You never stood a chance from the start. Indeed, Rebecca is a beautiful woman. I was surprised when I first saw her. But think about it. Do you really believe you're attractive enough to be chosen by such a beauty that everyone notices? His confident smile quickly distorted, and he let out a short moan, followed by heavy snorts. Rebecca is also a beautiful person on the inside. That's why she fell for my personality. Anyway, don't get in the way of someone's love life just because you weren't chosen. A person beautiful on the inside wouldn't have an affair with a married man. You say you bought the new house for her, but I don't think she plans to live with you. She just transferred me the compensation. And quickly moved to a high-rise apartment with another man. What? Another man? Look, here's a photo of Rebecca's cohabiting partner. He's quite handsome. You're not ugly, but compared to this young guy, as different as night and day. Ethan trembled as he took the photo from me, then froze with his mouth agape. The photo showed the stunningly beautiful man holding hands with Rebecca in harmony. Large tears started rolling down his cheeks. This can't be true. Why not go and check for yourself? She was quite boastful about this high-rise apartment. I know the address. Oh, the address, could it be? Suddenly, the mother-in-law exclaimed and joined the conversation, to which I smirked. That's right, Mother. That's the high-rise apartment where I sent Ethan's belongings. As I confidently stated this, Ethan finally collapsed to his knees. His arms dangled lifelessly as he sat on the floor. I see. What goes around comes around. Well, I don't feel sorry for him. He even tried to deceive us, his parents. It seems his punishment came swiftly. They sighed in dismay. It seemed he had no energy left to fight back, so I decided to deliver the final blow. Ethan, your scheme was poorly executed. You know that, right? If you're going to deceive someone, you should be prepared to be deceived yourself. I will never forgive you for deceiving not just me but also your kind father and mother. He said nothing, just hanging his head down in silence. Tears quietly fell to the floor. The in-laws and I exchanged looks and silently left the scene. Afterwards, Ethan began living alone in the spacious new house, but peace did not last long. One day, suddenly, Rebecca's boyfriend burst in, and a fierce fight erupted. The commotion and shouting were so severe that the neighbors, shocked by the noise, called the police. It turned out that the cause was his belongings I had sent to Rebecca. As Ethan had no idea about her main partner, the man also had no idea about him. This was triggered by the sudden arrival of the packages, revealing their relationship. Additionally, the packing slip attached to the items had Ethan's address and phone number. That's why the man came charging over. The expensive furniture that Ethan had purchased, dreaming of a life with Rebecca, was severely damaged during the scuffle. The wallpaper and the wooden floor were also heavily damaged, plunging him into deeper despair. Meanwhile, it turned out that Rebecca had several other affairs other than Ethan and the man from the high-rise apartment. However, this police incident, the fights between the men, seemed to have been an eye-opener, as all of them realized that further involvement with Rebecca would lead to nothing good. She was eventually abandoned by all. Having lost everything, Rebecca began to show up at Ethan's place again, seeking refuge. His phone was filled with texts and calls from morning till night, and she frequently visited the new house. According to neighborhood rumors, a young woman was often seen lurking around the new house. Ethan gradually became terrified of leaving his house and spent his days with the shutters and curtains perpetually closed. He quit his job and only took on work that could be done from home, living a life shadowed by fear of Rebecca while deteriorating both mentally and physically. As for me, I am now fully devoted to my work. Perhaps because I no longer have unnecessary worries, I enjoy going to work every day. My performance has been recognized by my superiors, and I will be promoted to a higher position for the next fiscal year. Now that I have more financial freedom, I made a point of thanking the in-laws again. Without their support, it wouldn't have been possible to corner him so smoothly. They are truly kind people who treated me like their own daughter. I plan to live this new phase of my life positively and cherish it as a way to repay the in-laws for their kindness. I ended up pregnant with the president's child. I'll be taking the seat as the president's wife. At that moment, something inside me snapped. She relentlessly mocked me, the president's wife, and bragged about her youthful look and always tried to one-up me. As if all the mocking was not enough, she took my job as the president's secretary. And now she's trying to take my husband too. That's right. I won't hold back anymore. I'll push you both into the depths of hell. I decided to bless my husband and Mandy. I signed the divorce papers that Nick handed to me. Of course, I received a hefty alimony. The two of them later had a grand wedding in Hawaii. Things changed a week later. I got a call from Mandy. Hey. Nick hasn't come home. You're his ex-wife, you must know where he is. Mandy's panicking voice. Just as I imagined, I smirked. Oh, I kept quiet, but he is. What? I exposed my husband's dark secrets. My name is Alyssa Smith. I am a 58-year-old housewife working part-time. I work as the secretary to the president of a company, my husband, Nick, It's 6 a.m. I usually wake up earlier than my husband and prepare breakfast. Then I head to the office alone, tidy up his office, and clean. This has been my daily routine. I do it so that Nick can work comfortably. It's 8 a.m. Nick enters the president's office. Oh, thanks, Alyssa. Did you clean today too? I approach Nick and straighten his tie. It's fine, dear. You want to work in a refreshed room, don't you? Yes. Nick and I had an arranged marriage. Although we didn't have children, we've lived together cooperatively. This year marks our 30th anniversary. The company which Nick inherited from Nick's father has been stable. And I've had no complaints about our life. By the way, about the new business you planned, the chairman will sponsor it. The transfer just came through. That's great. Kevin seems to like you, your negotiation helped a lot. The company is run by Nick as president and his older brother, Kevin, as chairman. Nick affectionately calls him Brother Kev. Remember, you got help from the chairman before for another new business you planned. Aren't you proceeding with that? As I asked casually, Nick looked annoyed.
Ah.
It's fine. I'll handle it. Okay. My schedule is completely free today, right? Yes, as you requested. Nick smiled contentedly. Good, good. Then, Alyssa, there's someone I want you to meet. I'll bring them here now, wait for me. Understood. Someone he wants me to meet? I felt a slight unease at his words. Soon, laughter was heard from the hallway. Nick's voice and another, a young woman's voice. They seem really close, which made me tilt my head as the door opened. Sorry to keep you waiting, Alyssa. Nick said with a smile on his face. But I was so fixated on the young woman standing next to him that I forgot to reply. She was very young. Her hair was a light golden brown, and she wore a mini skirt that showed her thighs. And a camisole that revealed her chest, as if she was dressed for a night out. Yet, she wore it stunningly, and I thought, so this is youth. This is Mandy Hansen. She'll be working here starting today. Nice to meet you. I was stunned. My husband introducing me to a young woman. You've got to be kidding, right? This alone ached my heart. Usually, we don't even hire new graduates. Excuse me, but how old is Mandy? She's 23. I met her at a bar with a friend recently. We hit it off, and she gives me energy with her youthfulness. Don't you think her presence will boost the morale of our employees, huh?
Ah.
Yes. He seemed genuinely enthusiastic. Seeing my husband's sparkling eyes, I was at a loss for words. Then, Alyssa, please teach Mandy how things are done around here. Huh, Mandy will be working as a general employee, right? Then perhaps someone else should.
Ah.
I forgot to mention. We're moving to a two-person secretarial team from now on. So please teach Mandy the ropes of secretary work. A two-person team? Is that necessary? Well. You're not so young anymore. It might be good to hand over some work to the younger ones. I felt a sting in my heart at Nick's light-hearted laughter. I am not so young anymore. The way you say that. All right then, take care. I'm stepping out for some personal matters. I'm counting on you to teach her. Saying that, Nick left me and Mandy in the president's office. I took a deep breath to calm down. Once Nick makes up his mind, he charges ahead. And inevitably, he fails and ends up regretting it alone. This has been a common occurrence throughout our marriage. At times like this, it's useless to say anything. For now, I'll just do as he says. It's bound to fail again anyway. Hey, ma'am. Mandy tapped my shoulder. Yes? Ma'am, how old are you? Since I asked her age myself, I felt I should answer truthfully. I'm turning 58 this year. However, it seemed my sincere thoughts did not reach Mandy. What? That's the same age as my grandma. Ma'am, you could drop dead anytime, right? And yet you still work, that's kinda sad. I gave a wry smile. I like my job. It's not sad at all.
Ah.
Right. The sad one is the president, right? Whether at home or at work, he's always with an old hag. Really, poor thing. Her words kept coming, one after another, making my face twitch. What exactly are you trying to say? Huh? You don't get it? I guess it's true what they say, old people's brains turn slow. Mandy sighed heavily and stated clearly. A young and beautiful girl like me has a higher standing than an old lady like you. You get that, right? Old lady. Her face was full of smiles as she said this, and I shuddered. I couldn't stay silent any longer. You know, you really need to learn some common sense. Oh, did I make you angry? Are you going through menopause or something? What? See, you're quick to anger. If you get worked up over this, how can you keep working? Menopause makes you sweat a lot and get out of breath, right? You are struggling already. Maybe it's time you retired? As I stood there dumbfounded, Mandy laughed and whispered in my ear. Maybe you should retire as the president's wife too. I shuddered. This person intends to take Nick away from me. I raised my voice without thinking. Enough is enough. I can't teach someone with such motives any work. Leave the company right now. I expected it to turn into an argument, but Mandy just stared at me. Tears were streaming down her face. I'm sorry. What? I didn't mean it. I just wanted to get along with you and joked, but this is too much. This is cruel. Mandy collapsed to the floor, sobbing. She looked like a tragic heroine. I'm leaving this company. Thank you for everything until now. Mandy rushed out of the room. What on earth is happening? I was too stunned to follow the sudden developments, and after a while, Mandy returned. She was accompanied by a red-faced Nick. What are you doing? I trembled at his sudden shouting. What's wrong, dear? I heard from Mandy. You yelled at her. That's because she was saying terrible things. Don't lie. I've been listening to your conversation. What? Apparently, Mandy had recorded our argument on her smartphone. The recording started from the moment I scolded Mandy, giving the impression that I had suddenly berated her for no reason and made her cry. So that's why she apologized earlier. Sobbing and all. I bit my lip in frustration. You don't believe me. Believe? Mandy came to me crying about what you did. There's a recording. It's clear whose words carry more credibility. A secretary who bullies my employee, you are fired as of today. What? I couldn't believe my ears. I always supported Nick, both at home and at work. And now he was prioritizing Mandy, who had just joined the company, over me. Wait a minute, then who will do the secretary's work? It'll obviously be Mandy. That's impossible. Plus, about Macau. I almost let something slip, then decided to phrase it in a way only Nick and I would understand. You know, about your hobby. I can handle that myself. I prefer the pure and adorable Mandy over you, you liar. Isn't a young and beautiful girl like her more suitable for me than someone old like you? Nick squinted his eyes happily and looked at Mandy next to him. Mandy gazed up at Nick with a big smile and then glanced at me, sticking out her tongue slightly. I protested repeatedly to Nick, but he wouldn't listen. Being a secretary isn't easy. Despite my insistence that Mandy couldn't handle it, only optimistic words came back. Like it's not that hard, or you won't know until you try. He probably thinks he's her knight in shining armor. I was speechless at his delirious attitude, unfitted to someone running a company. Eventually, Nick threw out my personal items from my workspace. Instead, he arranged a brand new desk and cute stationery. The ones young girls would like, all for Mandy. It was all pointless. Realizing this, I didn't want to waste any more effort and left the company. However, Nick didn't come home that night or contact me. I thought it was just his way of getting back at me, but as 1 week turned to 1 month, and then 3, I grew anxious. Then one day, Nick called me to the office. I headed to the president's office, wondering if he finally understood the difficulty of the secretary's job. Was he going to fire Mandy and call me back to the company? Clutching a sliver of hope, I knocked on the president's office door. "Come in." When I opened the door, I saw an unbelievable scene. Nick was smiling happily, holding hands with Mandy. Both of them laughed joyously as they looked at me. "Long time no see, Alyssa. I have some big news today." "What is it?" Then Mandy placed her hand over Nick's mouth. "Let me say it, please." "I want to thank your wife too." "That's right." Nick nodded deeply, and Mandy, with a broad smile, said to me, "We're getting married." "Ma'am, I want to thank you for all you've done for my fiancé." "What?" Nick laughed sheepishly in front of my shaken self. "Well, I thought there's no point in hiding it. I'm thinking of starting a second life. You're getting old too, so it's better if you live quietly by yourself." "What is that?" "Do whatever you want." I felt as if all the blood drained from my body. "Wait a minute, ma'am. We're not done talking yet. Here, this is a gift. I even went to the store to copy it for you." Mandy handed me several sheets of paper. They were printed with black and white photos. When I saw them, I almost felt sick. "This ultrasound picture, you can't mean." Mandy nodded slowly and gently stroked her belly. As she came closer and whispered in my ear, "I ended up pregnant with the president's child. I'll be taking the seat as the president's wife." At that moment, something inside me snapped. She relentlessly mocked me, the president's wife, and bragged about her youthfulness, always trying to one-up me. She even took my job as the president's secretary, and now she's trying to take my husband too. That's right. I won't hold back anymore. I'll push you both into the depths of hell. I decided to bless my husband and Mandy. I signed the divorce papers that Nick handed to me. Of course, I received a hefty alimony. The two of them later had a grand wedding in Hawaii. Things changed a week later. I got a call from Mandy. "Hey. Nick hasn't come home. You're his ex-wife, you must know where he is." Mandy's panicking voice. Just as I imagined, I smirked. "Oh, I kept quiet, but he is." "What?" I exposed my husband's dark secrets. "He has a hobby. He's probably in Macau right now." "Ma. Macau? Haven't you heard? There's a big hotel in Macau with a casino. Nick heads there whenever he gets the chance." Mandy gasped. "You mean?" "Yes. Nick is probably indulging in gambling right now. I used to schedule his time to prevent him from getting too involved. Apparently, the new secretary didn't know. He didn't want to show her his bad side, wasting the money he earned on gambling." Mandy was so shocked she couldn't say anything. I chuckled. "I'm actually grateful to you." "What?" "Nick started getting into gambling these past few years. He was apparently invited by someone from a new business contact. So what? Before you came along, I still had some affection for Nick. I was worried about him falling deeper into that habit. But now, I've completely cut that off. There's no better opportunity than having such a scoundrel take himself off my hands. And even giving me compensation on top of it. Thanks to you, I'm looking forward to my second life. I laughed loudly, hearing rough breathing from the other end of the phone. Don't joke with me, you old hag. Getting too cocky. Goodbye, then. You're going to have a tough time ahead, Mrs. President. I said sarcastically and hung up on Mandy, ignoring her cries from the other end. A few days later, as I was relaxing in my new apartment, the doorbell rang. Could it be a courier? I don't remember ordering anything. Suspicious, I peered through the peephole. There stood my ex-husband, Nick, his face red with anger. You're there, aren't you, Alyssa? How dare you tell Mandy about the gambling? The gambling. Realizing what he meant, I decided to open the door and invite Nick in. He must have hired a detective agency to find where I live. He would just come after me again if I ran now. It's better to settle this here. I had some important information to tell him. I prepared a folder with documents before opening the door. Long time no see, Nick. I smiled gracefully. What do you mean, long time? How can you smile after destroying a man's home? Nick was furious, getting in my face and shouting. He was trying to intimidate me, but that wouldn't work on a wife of many years. Oh my, why so red? What happened? It's none of your business. I chuckled. He came here to vent his anger. I could see through him. I knew what had happened between him and his wife. Let me guess, you had a marital spat. Shut up. Mandy must be upset about you spending most of your income on gambling. I managed your salary, and you were given an allowance, right? She probably told you the same thing. Nick froze, shocked. How? How do you know that? Did you plant a bug or something? He asked seriously, and I burst out laughing. Because you had the same conversation with me. When your gambling habit was discovered before. And then you said, what's wrong with spending my own money on my hobbies? You probably said the same thing to her, and now you're here to take it out on me, right? Nick bit his lip and clenched his fists in silence. Don't underestimate a wife of 30 years, Nick. I thought to myself, seeing the frustration on his face. You should be grateful I was your secretary. I managed your schedule well to limit your gambling time to keep you from ruin. I wonder if Mandy, a naive 23-year-old, can handle that? Well, you have no choice but to let her try. There's a child on the way, after all. Child. At that word, Nick's face lit up. What a transparent man. Yes, that's right. Mandy and I are having a child. Unlike you, who couldn't have children, she can give me an heir. You lost as a woman. Nick looked down at me triumphantly. Well, that's wonderful. We are happy. Don't try to destroy my family again. I came here to warn you. Nick pointed at me sharply. I looked puzzled and tilted my head. Me, destroy? I have no such intentions. In fact, I was thinking of helping you. Help me? He looked baffled. Have you gone to the gynecologist visit with Mandy? Huh? That's a place for women. Mandy wanted to go alone, so I didn't accompany her. You saw the ultrasound photos, right? On glossy, thick paper, 4 photos. No, what I saw was on thin, regular paper. I see. I showed Nick several photos from the folder. They were grainy black and white photos, ultrasound images of a baby. Nick's eyes widened. What, you're pregnant? Of course not. These were the gift Mandy gave me. She's well prepared, isn't she? Even printing extras for me from the internet. The internet. Confused, Nick took the paper I offered him. It was a printout of a blog post. The article was written 2 years ago. The writer made a pregnancy announcement and included an ultrasound photo. Compare this photo with the earlier ones. Notice anything? Nick alternated his gaze between the photo and the article, then his face turned pale. It can't be. That's exactly it. I overlaid the copied blog photo with Mandy's ultrasound image and held them up to the light. The silhouette of the baby matched perfectly. Ever heard of image search? It's a tool that finds similar images on the internet based on the one you provide. I used it to find this blog. She must have copied this article entirely and trimmed the photo to make it look neat. Then, you're saying the pregnancy. Nick's face turned pale and he looked as if he would collapse. I decided to deliver the final blow. It's a lie. There's no baby in her belly. Nick collapsed to his knees. No. That can't be. She wouldn't lie about something like that. It's impossible. After everything I bought for her. Expensive brand clothes, bags, even an expensive engagement ring. Nick, overwhelmed by his emotions, pounded the floor with his fist repeatedly. The sight was so absurd, I couldn't help but let a smile slip. It's a shame you couldn't become a father. If you think about it, given your age, it's doubtful you could have fathered a child anyway. Thinking a young partner would surely result in children was naive. You should ask Mandy about the truth yourself. I'll call her over now. Nick seemed too drained to argue. He slumped in silence. I called and invited Mandy to this apartment. After a while, the doorbell rang and I opened the door. Mandy screamed upon seeing Nick and me together. What are you doing? Trying to steal Nick back from me. No, I told you, I'm grateful to you. I have a baby in my belly. You can't tear us apart. Ignoring my explanation, Mandy shouted triumphantly. She entered the room and gently hugged Nick's shoulder. Are you okay? Let's go home and discuss money again. I'll manage the finances, right? We'll overcome this challenge together. After all, in my belly is. Shut up. Nick slowly stood up, stared at Mandy, and spoke quietly. The pregnancy is a lie, isn't it? Mandy's face twisted visibly. What? What are you talking about, Nick? Tell me the truth, Mandy. The pregnancy is real. I showed you the ultrasound, didn't I? It's the fruit of our love. Denying that is cruel. Wah. Mandy sat down on the floor, crying, but then quickly looked up and glared at me. You must have filled his head with nonsense. You're just a jealous old woman because I'm young and beautiful. Mandy snorted haughtily. I laughed back at her. Is that all you have to say? What? Come on, Nick, let's go. Nick. Mandy pulled on Nick's arm. Nick brushed her hand away. Enough, Mandy. Huh? Nick thrust the copy of the blog post and the ultrasound photo at Mandy. There's no escaping it now. I trusted you. Why did you lie about this? When you told me you were pregnant, I was so happy I cried. Mandy's expression faded instantly. Nick. What now? Mandy looked up at him with teary eyes. I just wanted to test your love. I was afraid I was just a fling. That's why I said I was pregnant. Then you said you wanted the baby, right? I was so happy. Nick seemed somewhat taken by Mandy's full smile. So, you lied because you love me? Yes. We can still have a child. My beauty and your brain, our child would be amazing. Eventually becoming president and making lots of money. That's impossible. I pulled Nick and Mandy back to reality. Hey. We were having a moment. You think this man has money? I asked calmly. Of course. He's a president, after all. True, our company has been around for generations and isn't doing badly. But that's about the company as a whole. This man is a gambler. You know what that means, right? What? Mandy turned pale and clung to Nick. Nick, you're rich, right? You told me that once we're married, we'd live comfortably because you have more money than you know what to do with. Challenged, Nick replied in a faltering voice. It's okay. I'm just down from the casino right now. But, the company is starting a new venture soon. We'll make a killing. What are you talking about? I pointed out Nick's unsightly lie. I know that there are no plans for a new business. What do you mean? Remember how you got funding from the chairman recently? Where is that money now? Surely, someone hasn't used it to buy luxury brands and an engagement ring for his new wife? I glared at Nick. What are you talking about? I would never do that. Nick laughed dismissively, though his voice was trembling. I sighed shortly. You've embezzled company funds, haven't you? As I looked at him squarely, Nick swallowed hard. I had my suspicions. Since the beginning of this year, you've repeatedly said, I'm starting a new business, and got financial support from the chairman. But no business has progressed. You don't even try to advance any. Just on to the next new business. It would be odd not to suspect something. So I spoke to the chairman and decided to secure concrete evidence. You teamed up against me. So, the deposit from Brother Kev that day was. It was a decoy. You transferred the funds for the new business into your own account, didn't you? Previously, you seemed to route it through various accounts to avoid detection. But this time you put it directly into your own account. What? Were you that desperate for money? Trying to prove to Mandy that you're wealthy? As I hit the nail on the head, Nick mumbled incoherently. I delivered the final blow. You're done. You should be arrested and live the rest of your life as a pariah. Shut up. It was all kept within the family. It'll just be probation anyway. Besides, my brother will pay the bail. Even if I'm prosecuted, I'll be out soon. Nick was trying to reassure himself. And, why do you even know this? You were fired by me. You have no business with this. The chairman told me. Brother Kev told you? Yes, I was hired by the chairman. What? Nick's mouth hung open in shock. I explained calmly. He contacted me right after he heard you had dumped me. He apologized for his brother's terrible behavior and asked if he could hire me back. I said yes right away. You didn't know that, did you? Brother Kev was keeping it from me. That bastard. I'm grateful to the chairman. He's given me responsibility for managing his schedule. I'm even earning a better salary than before. As I showed a broad smile, Nick gritted his teeth. Damn Brother Kev. I'm going to confront him right now. Just as Nick was about to leave the house, Mandy called out. Hey. Mandy grabbed Nick's arm, pulling him towards her and got in his face. Her expression was demonic. Hey, old man. Huh? What? Nick was startled by Mandy's unusually low voice. Mandy took a deep breath and yelled. You deceived me. All that flaunting about being rich. And you turn out to be a decrepit criminal. How dare you? I am sorry, Mandy. Nick, visibly frightened, gently took Mandy's hand. He looked into her eyes and slowly said, "But, it's okay. I'll probably just get probation, and I can return home. I might be ousted from the company, but we can still be happy together without money." Don't make me laugh. Mandy shook off his hand and looked at him with disgust. Like I'd live with a penniless old man like you. After I lied about being pregnant and managed to get us married. What a waste of time. Now there's a stain on my civil status too. The worst. Mandy pushed Nick aside and stormed out of the room. Mandy, wait. Mandy. Shut up. Bang. Mandy slammed the door behind her. Nick stood at the door like a ghost, abandoned by his new wife. I addressed Nick. Please leave. This is my house. Hey, Alyssa. What is it? Can we start over? I as the president, you as the secretary, like before. Nick offered a sycophantic smile, but I shook my head firmly. Impossible. I absolutely despise you. I never want to see your face again. Nick's eyes widened, and he started to tremble. That's enough of that. I opened the door and pushed Nick out. As I locked the door and started watching TV in the living room, Nick must have realized it was all over, as he quietly left the building. Later, Nick was arrested by the police. He thought his brother would pay his bail, but that expectation failed. And he was moved to a cold detention center alone. Nick was arrested for embezzling the funds raised by his brother. Additionally, he had been asking business associates and affiliated companies for money for new ventures, and had been transferring it to his own accounts for personal use. Nick was sentenced to actual imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and will be unable to come out for several years. As for Mandy, she was suspected of conspiring with Nick and underwent police interrogation. Although no evidence of conspiracy was found, the police discovered that she had been frauding money from multiple business owners. She approached wealthy-looking men at bars, befriended them, became their girlfriend, and then claimed she was pregnant or needed money for her parents' surgery, swindling them out of large sums. In essence, Nick was also a victim of Mandy's schemes. Mandy was arrested for fraud. Thus, the two of them ended up in the care of the police. 6 months have passed since Nick's arrest. I am still working with the chairman. Restoring the image of a company that has been involved in a scandal is not easy, and the chairman is constantly troubled by it. I want to support him by his side. I feel a strong sense of gratitude towards him. I returned to the office with the chairman at night. He sat deeply in his chair and sighed. It was quite tiring today. You had back-to-back business dinners. The chairman looked into my eyes and smiled. Yes. But thanks to Alyssa choosing a good restaurant, I was able to enjoy the meal. Many of the clients are around my age and were pleased with the healthy yet luxurious restaurant. Moreover, none of them knew about today's venue. It was like a surprise. Thanks to that, the conversation flowed well. Thank you. The chairman showed a gentle smile. Unlike Nick, he is always calm and composed. When he speaks with someone, he always uses polite language, and his sincere character is evident. I find the chairman's personality appealing. You give me too much credit. As I said that, the chairman sighed contentedly. I cannot believe someone as amazing as you was my foolish brother's spouse. I chuckled. Ex-spouse. I have no relationship with him anymore. That's right. By the way, Alyssa, how long do you plan to keep working? Don't you think about retiring and living quietly at home? I answered with a smile. I love my work. As long as my body allows, I want to continue working. The chairman nodded happily several times. I want you to help me rebuild this company together. It will be a long partnership, but I'm counting on you from now on. I nodded emphatically. Yes, Chairman. As I responded energetically, the chairman laughed as if amused, and seeing that, I felt a warmth in my heart. My second life is sure to be fulfilling. Watching the chairman smile, I felt just that. Our daughter is with my mom. Don't worry about her, just focus on your treatment. I was hospitalized, unable to pick up my daughter, after an unexpected accident. My husband reassured me that it was okay, because he had left our daughter with my mother-in-law. I went to my in-laws' house to pick her up as soon as I was discharged. What? I don't know about her. Didn't my son take her back because he said he would take care of her? That can't be true. I definitely left her with mom, right? Why would you tell such a lie? What's going on? You've never taken care of her before. There's no way you could balance work and childcare. Wait, calm down. Seeing a certain person who had just returned home, my husband, who started to panic, turned pale then ran away. The person who appeared was indeed his archenemy, marking the beginning of his downfall. I married my husband, a colleague at the same company where I work. In my second year, a new project started, and both of us were part of this project. From a purely professional relationship, we gradually became romantically involved. And we got married 3 years later. We both worked for a while after getting married. But it was deemed unwise for a couple to be in the same department. So I was the only one transferred. I had to abandon the skills I had cultivated and start learning new things. I was just starting to establish myself in the new department and build new relationships when I found out I was pregnant. And I chose to resign and become a full-time homemaker. My husband had always talked about wanting children as soon as possible after getting married. I also wanted to have children in my 20s. But we weren't particularly trying. It just happened naturally. Just as we had hoped, I got pregnant and gave birth. I often heard that it's nice to have a girl first, so I was thrilled to find out that we had a daughter. I felt a strong sense of being a mother, thinking that my husband and I would raise her together. However, my husband was different. Despite his earlier eagerness for children, he showed little interest even after our daughter was born. He didn't participate in childcare, and eventually, I ended up raising her alone. The only consolation was that my husband never got irritated by things like our child's night cries. We lived in the same area as my in-laws. I would have preferred to live near my parents, but it was inconvenient for commuting. So I reluctantly settled for this. Although I was anxious about my relationship with my in-laws, it turned out to be easier than I had imagined. Compared to the typical stories of family strife, I had a good relationship with them. My mother-in-law was a straightforward person who often spoke her mind, without considering how it might be received or felt by others. Sometimes, I was puzzled by her words. My father-in-law was a man whose motto seemed to be clean and upright. He always tried to act considering others' positions, and greatly despised those who acted against his beliefs. Yet, when it came to his granddaughter, he seemed like a completely different person. Madly in love with her, showing his affection not by spoiling her but by disciplining her effectively and loving her deeply when she did something good. He was quite a human. However, my husband considered his father terrifying, preferring to keep his distance and avoid involvement if possible. As my daughter turned 2, my husband's job became busier due to a departmental transfer. With the excuse that he was busy, he took a further distance himself from our daughter. At 2 years old, a child is curious about everything and can get into all sorts of mischief if not watched. I wasn't asking my husband to spend hours entertaining her. All I asked was that he spend some time with our daughter while I was cooking or taking a shower. However, he wouldn't listen, insisting that even the family's main breadwinner, supporting the family financially, needed to rest. When he lounged around at home, it only increased my workload, leaving me exhausted from taking care of my daughter and my husband. I was looking forward to seeing my daughter grow up, and that motivated me to keep going. But thinking about my hopeless husband, who showed no signs of growth, only added to my exhaustion. Then my husband's infidelity came to light. It started when I noticed lipstick on his shirt, knowing he commuted on crowded buses. It wouldn't have been surprising if it got there accidentally. If he had used that as his excuse, I probably wouldn't have suspected infidelity and would have let it slide. However, he acted suspiciously when I just asked him, "What's this lipstick from?" His face contorted, his eyes darted around, and he just stammered without saying anything coherent. "Don't tell me, are you cheating?" "No, it was just a lapse of judgment. I was taken to a nightclub by someone from work, and..." He ended up drunk at a high-end nightclub and, apparently, woke up in a hotel room with a nightclub worker, while the woman was doing her job. The fact that it went as far as sharing a bed suggested it might have been more than just work. My husband, despite his drunken state, apologized profusely, making himself small. And I forgave him this time only, thinking that I was still a homemaker with a young daughter, and didn't want to put her through a divorce. But if something like this happens again, we'll divorce then. And I'll demand double the child support and property division, including what's due this time. Understood. I'll keep that in mind and never betray you again. Trying to make up for his actions, my husband, who had previously shown no interest in our daughter, began to smile at her and suggested playing with her. Although I found it insincere and ridiculous, I didn't object, hoping this might lead to him actually playing with her. Isn't that great? Daddy's going to play with you. At first, my daughter was surprised but soon climbed onto his lap, asking him to read a storybook. This was the scene I had dreamed of. But it was short-lived as he soon moved her off his lap and left, saying he was going to the store. After that, I never saw him interacting with our daughter again. In the end, he remained uninterested in our child, and I continued to struggle with childcare alone. These days continued as if they were the norm, with my husband still claiming to be busy with work and spending little time at home. As for the suspicions of infidelity, without end if I started, I chose to believe him when he said he was working. I thought that if he was doing something under the guise of work, it would eventually come to light at his company and I would hear about it. Even after resigning, I still occasionally keep in touch with ex-colleagues I became close with. My husband knew that, so I made an effort to think he wouldn't tell such lies that could easily be discovered. Then, one day, I had an unavoidable errand to run. I couldn't take my daughter with me, so I decided to book a spot at a temporary daycare. Although my in-laws had told me not to hesitate to ask them for help, I was afraid of becoming too dependent on their support. If my husband had participated more in childcare, it would have been easier to ask in-laws for help. Thinking this, I left my daughter at the temporary daycare, and she started fussing as she didn't want to be separated from me. My daughter is active and a bit restless. She didn't want to leave my side. The childcare worker managed to distract her with her favorite books and toys, and I was finally able to leave. I hurried to finish my errand, trying to pick her up as soon as possible. Little did I know that this would lead to an unbelievable situation. Just as I thought I heard someone shouting, "Watch out," behind me, My consciousness was abruptly cut off. The next thing I knew, I was on a hospital bed. A runaway vehicle had crashed into the building I was in, causing a major accident involving several employees and customers. I was one of the injured customers. When I regained consciousness, a nurse explained the situation to me. As soon as I understood my circumstances, my next concern was for my daughter. The nurse told me that all my belongings were gathered on a shelf. I tried to reach for my bag, but even sitting up caused tremendous pain throughout my body. I asked the nurse to retrieve my smartphone from my bag, and I contacted my husband. Thinking it would be bad to call him at work, I sent an email, but I was restless until I received a reply. Eventually, he replied with just one word, "No problem." His brief and indifferent reply made me anxious. Not just about our daughter. He didn't ask anything about the accident or how I was injured. I later learned that it was a major accident, significant enough to be reported in the news. The driver was a young person who had been doing something dangerous. And although I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, the police came to ask me some questions. I thought about sneaking out to check on my daughter, but I couldn't even get out of bed on my own. My husband came once to bring me a change of clothes and to handle the hospital admission procedures, but he hadn't visited since. Once I started worrying, I couldn't stop. I contacted my husband several times, and he told me that our daughter was already asleep or that his mother was taking care of her and having fun, so I shouldn't disturb them. Since that was the case, I also wanted to talk to him a bit, so I asked if I could call him. But he refused, saying he was tired from balancing unfamiliar childcare and work. And he didn't want to call because it would break his concentration. However, although very briefly and curtly, he replied to about 20% of the emails I sent. When I sent long messages continuously, he would snap at me to make my messages shorter and clearer because he didn't have time to read emails. And he scolded me for sending unnecessary emails. Later, the doctor wanted to discuss something with my family, so I asked my husband to come. But he refused, saying he prioritized childcare and that I should listen on my own. At this point, whenever something happened, my husband would say that he couldn't because of the unfamiliar childcare. And I found myself unable to say anything. I felt guilty for making him do unfamiliar childcare because of my injury. Eventually, as I recovered enough to be discharged, the doctor told me I could go home if there were no problems at the next checkup. My husband had only brought me a change of clothes once, so I had been wearing the same clothes and didn't need much to take home when I was discharged. I used hospital rentals for anything else I needed. I took the shuttle bus from the hospital to the station, and when I arrived at the nearest station, I saw my husband, who was supposed to be at work, walking and flirting with a young woman. This young woman was the one he had an affair with, the one who had left lipstick on his shirt. It would be strange for me to pretend not to see and hide. It was only natural for me to call out to my husband when I saw him. "What are you doing here? And who is this lady?" Even though I knew she was the other woman, I pretended not to know. "I'm at work now." "This person is from work." His voice was clearly nervous. Without pointing that out, I politely smiled at her and asked my husband about our daughter. He made a strained excuse that she was fine and even said, "I have put her in temporary care just for today." Normally, he should have said that he had put her in temporary care as usual during his work, instead of saying today. But he said, "Just for today." So, what about before today? I wanted to press him, but instead, I tried a different approach by saying I had heard from my mother-in-law. "Oh, I misunderstood. I left her with my mom." Then he brazenly assured me that everything was fine and that there was need to worry. Meanwhile, the woman, not understanding the situation, pulled on his arm several times, asking what was going on. However, as words like a mother-in-law and a daughter entered our conversation, it seemed that the woman realized my husband was married. She hesitantly pulled on his arm at first, but became assertive as she got frustrated. She blurted out, "You've been lying." Summarizing their argument, it seemed that my husband had pretended to be unmarried. Moreover, he had even promised marriage to her, which was really surprising. Not only did they date, but he had also met her parents, visited wedding venues, and acted like an engaged couple, despite being a married man. "Give me back the time I spent dating you." "Don't say that. You had a good time, right?" "What? If I had known you were married, I wouldn't have bothered responding to your advances." They had met by chance at a bar counter, sitting next to each other. The woman had just broken up with her boyfriend and was heartbroken. Then my husband took advantage of her vulnerability to start the affair. The more I heard, the more she seemed like a victim too. When I offered to exchange contact information, she eagerly agreed and gave me her business card. Then, she left with tears in her eyes. I teasingly asked my husband, "Aren't you going to chase after her?" "Should I chase after her in this situation?" "Huh? I wouldn't know. I was being mean because I wanted to know whether he was serious about me or the woman. But I didn't expect him to answer my question with another one. I wondered what the woman, and I myself, saw in such a man. I was filled with a desire to question the version of myself who had agreed to marry him. After that, my husband and I returned home in silence. I'm not foolish enough to make a scene by arguing with him in public. But that didn't mean I had forgiven him or that my anger had subsided. Taking advantage of the situation, my husband began to say only what was convenient for him. I'm not in the wrong. I was keeping our promise, but that woman kept following me. She said she'd die if I didn't date her. You remembered the promise, huh? Then this will be quick. Next time you cheat, we will immediately divorce. And the child support and property division will be doubled, including the last time. Suddenly, my husband started panicking and desperately claimed it was just a moment of weakness. Because he was lonely while I was hospitalized, but when I listened calmly, he was blaming me. I thought, if you were lonely because I wasn't there, you should have visited me with our daughter. Since it's going nowhere just between the two of us. I suggested we talk at his parents' house with his parents as mediators, and headed there. Another reason was that I wanted to pick up our daughter from there as soon as possible. Upon arrival, my mother-in-law greeted us. "It seems our daughter has been in your care for a long time, thank you." "Where is she now?" "What? I don't know her." "Haven't seen her for a month, what do you mean?" Then my husband started panicking more than ever, sweating profusely. "Stop the bad jokes, Mom. I left her with you before I went on a trip a month ago, remember? I asked you to take care of her from that day for a month. Are you losing your memory? Don't you dare treat your mother like she has dementia, you fool. So, you were only supposed to leave her at your parents' house today? You've been focusing on work and childcare for the past month, right? What do you mean? Where did you take my precious daughter?" I pressed my husband intensely. He started to sob, insisting he wasn't lying and had left our daughter with his mother. He repeated like a mantra that his mother was lying. "Mother, should we go to the police and file a missing person report?" "Yes, we should." "Wait, please. I didn't do anything. I just went on a pleasant trip with her." My husband, who started to ramble about things no one asked, seemed unaware that he was confessing. Watching such a pitiful and ridiculous sight, I turned my gaze away and waved out the window. When I saw the very person I wanted to see approaching. As that person got closer, another individual's presence became clear. It was my father-in-law. He had sensed that there might be trouble at home today and had taken our daughter out. My daughter, seeing me for the first time in a month, desperately started walking towards me. It seems he had bought her a dress fit for a princess. And she seemed to be enjoying herself in a somewhat mature manner. When my father-in-law entered the room and saw my husband, his expression turned fierce. But in front of our daughter, he quickly reverted to his usual calm demeanor and handed her over to my mother-in-law. It seemed like he knew what was about to unfold. My daughter looked puzzled as to why I wasn't holding her. But I told her I would later and to play with grandma for now. Taking that cue, my mother-in-law began praising the dress my daughter was wearing. Pleased, my daughter quickly shifted her interest to the new clothes she had just received. And she moved to another room with her grandmother. Once my daughter and mother-in-law were fully out of sight in another room, my father-in-law's once calm expression turned fierce again. My husband, seeing his face, trembled in fear. Then, suddenly, he dashed out of the room and fled from the house barefoot. Clearly intent on escaping from his father, but he was quickly caught. My father-in-law is in good shape and moves swiftly despite his age. I had heard he played some sport when he was younger, but if my memory serves me right, it wasn't a sport that particularly involved running. Now, you might wonder how well I coordinated with my in-laws. It all started when I got a scolding call from my mother-in-law. About 3 weeks into my hospital stay, my mother-in-law criticized me for leaving our daughter with her grandparents for 3 weeks, questioning my actions as a mother. I thought she had been informed by my husband, so I was slightly panicked by her call. I frantically asked if she hadn't been informed by my husband. My son said you were gallivanting around and neglecting your childcare duties. He was undecided about what to do with our granddaughter due to a sudden business trip. He wanted me to take care of her, is that right? I was shocked that my husband had lied so blatantly. I quickly explained to her what my husband had told me and my current situation. After hearing my side, my mother-in-law was speechless and apologized immediately, realizing she had made a terrible mistake even though she didn't know anything at all. Once our misunderstandings were cleared, the next question was what exactly my husband had been up to by lying. I said I had an idea and asked for time to check before we ended the call. I immediately contacted a former colleague afterward. The colleague, who worked with me on the same team and entered the company in the same year as my husband, had always been supportive, even after I left the job. While cautious about sharing personal information, she sensed something was up and informed me of my husband's schedule. According to her, he hadn't gone on a business trip but had taken a long vacation for a family trip. It seemed he had been complaining to colleagues that he had to take a sudden long vacation because of me. As a result, I ended up being reprimanded by her. I won't ask the reasons, but you worked at this company too. You know how busy it is now, right? I'm not saying don't go on a family trip. But could you just shift the season a little? Thrown by childcare and healing from my injuries, I had seemingly forgotten my work memories. Pointed out by her, I checked the calendar and recalled indeed, it was a very busy period. If so, my husband, being involved, should have known how much trouble it would cause to take a long vacation during this busy time. Why did he proceed anyway? I tried to stop my former colleague, who wouldn't stop complaining on the phone, explaining that I understood her point but also wanted her to hear my side. After hearing my situation, she was so surprised that she was lost for words. And silence followed for a while. When she finally spoke, her tone was grave. And she asked to keep the call going as she wanted to check more details. After a few minutes, she had apparently opened my husband's company computer to check his history. There's a history of booking a trip for 2 right after you were admitted to the hospital. That means he got the news of your hospitalization and didn't rush to you but booked a trip instead? It's outrageous that he didn't come to the hospital knowing his wife was admitted. She can be quite intimidating when angry. After a tirade of harsh words about my husband, she offered her support whenever I needed it. The next day, my doctor told me that I could be discharged that weekend, if there were no issues at my next checkup. I communicated the plan to my mother-in-law to catch my husband in the act and discipline him. As the doctor had announced, my discharge was scheduled for the weekend. But I told my husband it would be a day later, at the beginning of the next week. Believing my discharge date without suspicion, my husband continued his affair carefree, not rescheduling his trip and enjoying it to the fullest until he was spotted by me at the nearest station. Had he listened to the doctor's explanation with me, he would have known that the discharge date could be moved up depending on my recovery. Don't run away, coward. If you didn't have a guilty conscience, you wouldn't need to run, right? This is different. It's a reflex. Don't make excuses, liar. I don't want to believe anything you say anymore. I thought you had reformed, but you continued the affair without ending it. I brought up the conditional forgiveness I had granted him last time, and told him that I was now enforcing the promises made then. Immediate divorce, and the money doubled. I stated that it was irreversible. My husband then tried to blame the persistence of the woman he was with, saying she wouldn't break up unless he took her on a trip. However, after being yelled at by my father-in-law to stop it, my husband shrank back and became silent, unable to respond. The plan was to discipline him, but it worked better than expected. The reason for its success was, more than anything, my husband's foolishness. His lies were exposed in broad daylight, and the repercussions spread further than expected. First, I communicated several times with the other woman to verify his claims. She provided evidence such as photos with her family, brochures from when they visited wedding venues, business cards from staff who assisted them, and details from trying on wedding dresses and viewing engagement rings. The more I heard, the more I realized she wasn't just a fling, but another victim of my husband's deceit, much like myself. I shared with her all the lies my husband had told me. She had no intention of marrying a married man, and even now that she knew the truth, she didn't intend to take him from me. She offered to return him to me, but I had no use for him either. After a while, the woman formally demanded compensation for the broken engagement. Furthermore, her parents started making noise, claiming their daughter was deceived by a heartless marriage scammer, and filed a police report. By that time, my divorce from my husband had been finalized, so my daughter and I were not affected. The case of my husband's suspected marriage fraud was headed towards a settlement with a hefty compensation. However, I doubted he could pay such a large amount, and this intuition proved correct. He sought help from his parents' home, but his plea was in vain as they ultimately disowned him, disgusted by his actions. His company, too, finally decided to act, having previously been dissatisfied with his poor work attitude. My husband had used the company computer for personal vacation bookings, and had stubbornly taken long leaves without reading the room. It would have been tolerable if it was just about family, but traveling with a mistress and facing accusations of marriage fraud was too much to defend. He was relegated to a less critical department, rumored to be a stepping stone to layoffs. The gossip about his affair spread there too, and they talked behind his back, making his situation uncomfortable. Yet, he couldn't quit because he had to pay a large amount of childcare and property division over many years. He has reportedly gained weight from stress and lost much of his hair, becoming unrecognizable. Recently, a company health checkup revealed his critical condition, and he tearfully begged me to reconcile, claiming I was the only one he wanted by his side in the end. Of course, I immediately refused. When I warned him that I would file a harassment suit if he showed up again, he trembled and fled. It seems he was quite frightened during the police interrogations about the marriage fraud case. I moved closer to my parents' home and now live modestly but happily with my daughter. With my parents' support, I still maintain a good relationship with my former in-laws at a comfortable distance. They occasionally visit and cherish my daughter greatly, and I am truly grateful for their presence.